speak, but it's probably Jürgen Didier will cover that. I will check with Jürgen Didier why he's not here yet. He has received his link.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez is on a Firefox browser, which is not advised to use for this platform. So please ask him to log back in using the latest version of Chrome. Thank you.
Okay, I'll tell him that.
Thank you.
Hi, Slavik, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well done.
So you are doing the conclusions.
Well, yes,
Take
it's a privilege and a pleasure to do that. I'm going to listen carefully to your introduction.
I just saw, so 1 minute left before the start. I just saw that Thibaut Kleiner started to connect. Thibaut, do you hear us?
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, very good. So everything it seems all right. I mean, I will not. I will. If you need me, basically, I'll be listening, and I'm happy to intervene if you have
Hi, Thibaut.
Like that.
This is Dayton, the IT manager. I see that you logged in with Safari. If everything stays stable for you, you can keep on using Safari. If you would have issues, please log back in under Chrome. But for now, if it's fine for you with Safari, stay there. Just know that if you have an issue, use Chrome.
Good, because it's just yesterday I had huge problems using...
Thibaut, sorry, 10 seconds left before you go live. So if you have question, tell it in the presenters chat, right in the presenter.
Well, it's exactly 12 o'clock, so I think it's appropriate to start by saying good afternoon. I would like to welcome everybody to the second co-design session for Cluster 4. And as you can see on the screen, this session will be dedicated to the proposed European partnerships under the Cluster for Digital Industry and Space. Now, if you can have second slide, please. My name is Sławomir Tokarski, and I'm Director responsible for Innovation, Industrial Policy in DG GROW. And together with colleagues from different DGs, we are co-leading work and co-creating work on Cluster 4. So I will kick off this meeting, and I have today with me my colleague Matthias Petschke, who is Director in DG DEFIS, who will share with you some concluding remarks at the end of the session. Now, if we go to slide 3, the objective or what we would like to get from this session today is to hear from you how the European partnerships of Cluster 4 can contribute to the 6 expected impacts of the cluster. And I will come back a little bit later on to those impacts. And we are especially keen to hear which elements should be better stressed or further developed in this regard so that we can still take this into account while designing partnerships. We also would like to get your views on how synergies between different partnerships in Cluster 4 can be further developed. Or put it a different way, how do you foresee any cooperation activities between the proposed European partnerships? And what could these cooperation activities consist of? Now, to kick off our interactive discussion, I would like to highlight a few new elements with regards to partnerships under Horizon Europe compared to Horizon 2020. So I think maybe we moved a bit too quickly to next slide, if we can still see, yes, the preceding one. And then I will only go to the portfolio of 10 proposed partnerships for Cluster 4. And maybe the one element which I would like to emphasize here is that as for the rest of the Horizon Europe, proposed partnerships focus very much on impact, meaning that they cannot be separated from how well a proposed partnership supports the expected impacts of the cluster, and which is why we are so eager to hear your views on this today. Another important dimension is the level of ambition of different partners involved. So In a way, it's also about impact. It's about the impact that should unite all proposed partnership, and they focus on aligning national, European, and industrial research agendas in key areas to deliver on global challenges and modernize industry. So we see there were three types of partnerships on the screen. And now if we move to the next slide, you will see that under cluster 4, we have proposed two types of partnerships. We have proposed 4 institutionalized partnerships, which are those partnerships where EU participates in research and innovation funding programs that are undertaken by EU countries. And as you know, these partnerships require special legislative proposals from the Commission and then are implemented by dedicated governance structures created for that purpose. So you see the list on the screen. I'm not going to read it again. And you also see that we have 6 proposed co-programmed partnerships. And these are partnerships between the Commission and private or public partners. So if you move now to slide 5, and so that we are all on the same page, before turning to the questions for the discussion, I would like to recall key strategic orientations for Horizon Europe. And these are those that will be driving the investment priorities. You see them on the screen now, and as probably those of you who were listening to the session on Cluster 4 yesterday know, Peter and Lorena explained yesterday very much detail how they are relevant for Cluster 4. Now, if we move to the next slide, building on those 4 key strategic orientations, we have derived 6 expected impacts and related 6 destinations that will take us to those impacts and that will structure the first work program. And these reflect the wider effects on society, including the environment, the economy, and science, enabled by the research and innovation outcomes. Now, if we move to slide 6, this is taking us to the questions and to the discussion. And before starting the discussion, let me remind you that the overarching vision behind the investments of Cluster 4 is that of Europe that is shaping competitive and trusted technologies for European industry with global leadership in key areas. So that Europe is really in control and in lead of twin transition, meaning moving to production and consumption that respect the boundaries of our planet, and achieving a digital transformation that respects Europe's values and requirements. And what is important, we want to do so while maximizing benefits for all parts of the society in the variety of social, economic, and territorial contexts in Europe. So I think I shall stop here. You see the questions that we would like to discuss with you on the screen. One housekeeping rule: please submit your questions in the question and answer part of the chat, and there you can also vote on question to be picked up. I think we have present today in the room all the colleagues from the Commission who are responsible for different partnerships, and they will be happy and willing to reply to all your questions. So please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Well, I think we are missing the first courageous speaker to ask the question. Maybe, okay, I see some questions on the screen, and maybe I will pick up them gradually. But maybe to stimulate discussion right now, I would also like to add something which came from the yesterday's session, where we heard many important questions on the importance of Destination 6 as an overarching priority for Cluster 4. So one question will be, how do you see the role of partnerships in supporting the social dimension of our activities? And another issue would be also coming from yesterday, where stakeholders stressed that it is important for the projects tackling related challenges to collaborate. It regards not only the moment during the realization of the project, but also after the end of the life cycle of the project. So also the question would be, how do you foster this across partnerships, and whether you see any links where this would be especially relevant in the context of the partnerships that we are discussing. And then okay, we have quite many questions. You can vote on them, but maybe I will pick up the one coming from Giulia Campodonico, about the fact that while digital environment considers many application areas as a priority, this is not reflected in the related clusters and partnerships, which Barry mentioned, the use of AI, data, and robotics. So I think we have Thibaut here from Connect, if maybe he could take this question.
Yes, hello. Could you just repeat the question? Because I'm not sure I see it really in the chat room. So the digital environment considers many application areas as priority. This is not reflected in the related clusters.
Yes.
That's the one. Yes.
Yes, that's the one.
What I would say is that indeed in the digital environment there are many application areas that are served by technologies that have a cross-cutting nature. In the cluster, for the focus is really on technology, I would say. So you will find, for instance, as regards healthcare in cluster 1, that digital technologies are also used for specific purpose, but really in cluster 4, the idea is to build the technology in the first place that can be used as an enabler for all these applications. And the same is reflected in the partnerships. So the partnerships focus on specific technology areas, but there will be, of course, applications from these technologies in certain sectors. So I think that your point is totally relevant. It's just that in the way we have organized it for Horizon Europe, cluster 4 is really the technology cluster, and it serves other clusters as well.
Thank you, Thibaut. But maybe as we have here, and I see one more question that is relevant for you, I think, coming from Mr. Stephen O'Reilly, which is about whether the 4 institutionalized partnerships will have a common set of rules. And since you have 3 of them, I think you may be well placed to reply.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, very good, because my computer was behaving strangely. Yes, Stephen, it's a very relevant question, because indeed last Friday there was one institutional partnership adopted by the Commission, the partnership on high performance computing, But I wanted to reassure here colleagues and participants that in fact there will be what we are preparing now, which is a single act for all the institutional partnerships. I mean, the Commission is trying to have, I would say, a common set of rules as much as possible for all the partnerships to simplify also the life of companies and member states. I think we've realized that in the past there were sometimes a little bit some bureaucratic hurdles in the nuances and specificities of the partnership. So we are trying to harmonize this as much as possible, also with a common back office. And the rules, therefore, will be very, very similar. At the same time, it's also true that partnerships have their own specificities. So not everything will be exactly the same, but really the spirit is that for Horizon Europe, contrary to Horizon 2020, we go for common set of rules.
Okay, thank you very much. There is one interesting question on data management. I'm still staying here with you, Thibaut, in a sense, but this may be more horizontal questions to which also other colleagues could reply, and which is about the room for social innovation in re-engineering processes in public administrations, or maybe more broadly about the place of social innovations in the partnerships. So maybe if this one could be taken by one of the colleagues, either in Connect or RTD. Then maybe I will try to give you the answer to this one, because that's something which maybe it's not only related to the topics in the work program, but also in a broader sense to the whole cluster, and it came out also from the comments from the member states. So that is something on which we are reflecting, because clearly we see the need for aligning better the technological agenda with the social agenda. And social innovation is clearly the way to transmit social expectations and social aspirations to the technologies that we are going to develop. So that is something that we'll certainly be taking into account. Maybe one question which is more general about nature of partnerships, and I would ask Jürgen to reply to this, which is, how do you see member states interacting to achieve the objectives of partnerships? Jürgen? I guess Jürgen has some problems with the connections. Do we have any colleagues from RTD that can reply to this?
Yes, Slavek, I can answer. Nicholas Deligianakis here, DG RTD. Indeed, it is our intention to involve the member states in the partnerships, and there's already a good example in Horizon 2020 of that. And I thought the colleagues in Connect could comment on that particular issue. Thank you.
Nicholas, can you also reply the question concerning the date for the decision of the partnerships? There is a question from Jeremy Alakoun about the date in mind with respect to the final vote for the partnership by the program committee? I think it's relevant to all.
Yes, I can answer it partially. First of all, the co-program partnerships are part of the work program of Cluster 4, and therefore they are in a way decided alongside the non-partnership topics of the Cluster 4 work program. The institutionalized partnerships are subject to a different procedure, which I'm not an expert on, but it is basically happening in parallel. It's a separate but parallel procedure to the approval of the work program. And again, the colleagues in Connect may want to expand on this.
Colleagues from Connect, do you want to expand on this?
Hello, this is Jans Wegers from DG Connect. I actually was waiting for Thibaut to step in. So following on what Nicolas said, indeed for the institutionalized partnerships, there is a single basic act that's also explained by Thibaut, which will hopefully go into inter-service consultation soon for adoption by the Commission. It will go to the Combat Council in November, and following a positive decision there, the regulation is adopted. So for institutionalized partnerships, member states are directly involved via the Combat Council, and the decision will be made towards the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I have one more question to Nicolas, which would be coming from David Bissett, and it's about how will you ensure, I think that was mentioned in the slides about the set of common rules, how will you ensure that the common rules will not disadvantage co-programmed partnerships by imposing rules designed for institutionalized ones and vice versa? Nicolas, can you take this one?
Yes, thank you, Slavek. Well, first of all, the rules that apply to the co-program partnerships are the same rules as those for normal projects in the work program, because, of course, they follow the rules for participation of Horizon Europe. So there is no question that the rules of any different rules applying designed for institutionalized partnerships apply to the co-programmed ones, because the co-programmed ones are subject to the normal rules for participation. Now, for the institutionalized partnerships, there is a potential indeed to deviate from the rules for participation of Horizon Europe. And again, the colleagues in Connect may want to expand on this.
Maybe just a few words on this. Jans Wegers from DG Connect again. Indeed, it could be that there are certain rules that apply to institutionalized partnerships. In particular, if you look at the Horizon Europe Regulation Annex 3, it is mentioned that institutionalized partnerships need to have at least 50% of the funding coming from the private side. So that is a rule which is explicitly mentioned for the institutionalized partnerships. And it could be discussed to what extent such a rule would also apply to the other types of partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I still have some more general questions regarding partnerships. So Nicolas, I think these are for you. So the first one is from Sergio Ceballos. Can you mention how potential clients in the member states, SMEs, MNCs, universities can engage with partnerships?
Right. The general answer to this is that they engage with the partnerships, whether they be co-programmed or institutionalized, in the same way, because of course the topics of the co-program partnerships, as well as those for the institutionalized partnerships, which are outside the work program are, of course, open to all types of participants, obviously with an industrial focus. So participants are welcome, and indeed from different types of participants are welcome and indeed necessary. This also links to the question we had about the social innovation, that in the partnerships as well as in the general topics in the work program, we are looking for a new type of partner, including those partners who can enhance social innovation. So I'm trying to answer another question as well here. So there are no quotas for SMEs in particular, but as also we said yesterday, as Peter Dröll said yesterday at the general session, it is crucial to have SMEs, and we do all we can to involve them in normal topics as well as in partnerships. Their role is crucial. And indeed, we have a very good record in the predecessor activities of involving SMEs in these activities, whether they be in partnerships or in the non-partnership topics. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. We had targets under Horizon 2020, but in many cases, for example, in the area of NMEP, these targets have been exceeded, which shows that indeed the involvement of SMEs is very, very significant. Now, Matthias, maybe just to warm you up before you're coming to the concluding sessions, there is a question about cooperation with other organizations, whether we think about similar arrangements as we have with the European Space Agency for the space partnerships. Maybe you can explain a little bit why it is so unique in the space area, the partnership you have with ESA.
Thank you very much, Slavek. Colleagues, pleasure to be with you today. Well, our relationship with ESA is unique in many respects. It's based on a partnership, goes back to now several decades of close cooperation, is very intense, obviously very much focused on the space programs we have put in place, where ESA's role is not the same on all programs. We have, as many of you may know, with Copernicus, a program which is co-funded and where we have a governance which is slightly different from a cooperation and governance set up with ESA under satellite navigation, which is only funded by the EU budget. We have a relatively complex governance with this clear distinction, as I've just mentioned it, co-funding from the ESA budget, which essentially comes also from the member states, from the ESA member states, with a membership structure which is not identical with the EU membership structure. This is, I think, the key point also, which makes the governance sometimes a bit complex and the cooperation complex. We are when we deal with ESA, we are dealing with an international organization, which is not an EU entity, which is not an EU body, which is not an EU agency, and we have created some years ago in the area of satellite navigation our European EU agency, the GSA in Prague, which is going to receive more prerogatives under the next governance, which is going to be finalized currently under the finalization with the new space regulation. Now, to conclude on this point, so an important cooperation with ESA, not always an easy one. Full awareness, please, for everybody that ESA is not an EU entity, that the membership structures are different, that therefore also interests must not always be the same. However, a very strong cooperation with the distinctions along the different programs. The current programs being on Earth observation, co-funding from ESA in the EU on Copernicus, and GNSS, satellite navigation, which is a only Commission-financed, EU-financed program, and where therefore we are calling the shots, and things are a bit different between these different programs, obviously. I would hand over back to you, Slavik.
Yes. Thank you, Matthias. Okay, another question which I would like to ask colleagues from Connect to reply to is about synergies from Katya. And it is the question about regarding synergies with different partnerships. Are there plans for joint calls like the IMI and Excel joint call? Can you please reply to this one?
Hi, Slavik, Thibaut here speaking, and I will try to answer this question. I think it's a very pertinent question because, in fact, if you look at what we call the digital-centric partnerships in Cluster 4, we believe that they have some links between themselves and also with other activities of the cluster. So if you think, for instance, about KDT, key digital technologies, this can cover areas that are relatively broad. And as we had in Excel, nothing prevents that we do joint call. But at this stage, it is premature to tell you if this will happen. It's clearly an option. I think once we have clarified not only the work program, but also the work program of the joint undertakings, this is something that will be clearly on the table.
Thank you. There is one question I would like to reply to my colleagues from DG Grow, Natasha and Laia. And it goes as follows, because I think it's very relevant for the work they're doing together with colleagues from other DGs right now. After reading the first draft of the work program Horizon Europe Cluster 4 proposal, I got the impression that impact-focused design calls enabling short mid-term impact through implementation of the results. Can this impact consideration be strengthened more in the design of work program? So that's maybe a more general question concerning the architecture and the impact focus. Could you, Natasha or Laia, reply to this one?
Yes, hello, thank you. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the question. Yes, we are actually still, of course, in the process of further developing the different impacts of the topics, of the partnerships, and of our work program in general. So this is why we're having this discussion today, to also get your views on some of the impacts we've put on the table and that Slavik presented earlier today, and to see which ones you pick up on, which ones are maybe also missing or we haven't emphasized enough, so to hear this part. And then, of course, this will be embedded in the further refinement of the different partnerships that we are designing. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. And I have one which was certainly loved by Nicholas, which is about the budget. And it goes along these lines. With 10 partnerships in the scope of Cluster 4, do we have the budget to support all of them at the level necessary to enable them to reach their ambitions or impacts? Nicholas, can you take this one?
Well, I'm not thanking you for giving me this question, Slavik, but I'll do my best. We are not in a position to discuss the budget now because, as you know, this is a subject of discussions between the member states, and you know about these discussions. The general approach in Cluster 4 is that the Commission has proposed a budget that is commensurate with the predecessor activities, including the predecessor partnerships. So the general answer is that these partnerships can fit comfortably within Cluster 4, but inevitably compromises are made both in the general topics and in the partnerships, as you all know. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have also a question, the last question here I see on the list, which is about new space European ecosystem. So I wonder whether you, Matthias, or colleagues from Connect want to take this one. So it comes from Tadej Bouchard. Can I also ask about the new space European ecosystem and whether Cluster 4 wants to develop, what does Cluster 4 want to develop regarding the digitalization or being global service provider?
Christoph, do you want to come in?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I can say a few words, Christoph Kautz, DG here. So I think it goes beyond the question of partnerships, but just to explain regarding new space, and the Commission announced in its SME strategy from March this year that we will start an initiative which we have called Cassini, which stands for Competitive Space Startups for Innovation Initiative. And there we want to basically create an environment to foster entrepreneurship, so including, of course, new space. And we will be using also Horizon Europe to do that. And in the draft work program on which we're working at the moment, we have foreseen a whole part dedicated to foster space entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. I see one more question, which is maybe not directly related to partnerships, but is quite pertinent, especially now. It comes from Sara Menoni, and I think it's for you, Nicolas. And the question is the following. Will you be dealing also with issues that have clearly emerged in the COVID-19 crisis on data management, especially when those are informing key political decisions? Or maybe colleagues from Connect want to come in on this as well. Or maybe we can have a bit broader answer here regarding COVID-19 and the future emergencies of this kind, how they could be taken care of in the Horizon Europe.
Maybe just try. I think it's a very pertinent question because in fact the COVID-19 is I think collectively pushing us in looking critically at some areas. So definitely there will be an impact as regards the shape of the cluster. For instance, the greater importance we may give to data aspects, also in relation to healthcare, obviously. But there, in terms of how we will deal with this data issues, I think is not specific to this cluster. I think it's a more generic question and not something that I believe is so different.
Thank you very much. I think I'm just checking. I see that we replied to all the questions. What remains is comments that we'll carefully look at.
So just one point on the collaboration with the entities and member states. I think that's something that was already addressed by Matthias, but which I would like also to flag as a very important element for the co-programmed and for the institutional partnerships. In fact, really these partnerships have very often a legal entity as well. So their role is to reach out to the research communities, to the innovations, to the innovation providers, and they are very often organizing workshops and consultations on their own. So I really would like to invite people who are interested to get in touch with the legal entities, the associations that underpin the co-program partnerships, or with the joint undertakings themselves, because they have this function and this role to reach out really not only to member states, but really to the stakeholders at large.
Okay, thank you very much. I see one more question coming from Esther Hurtos from Barcelona. And I think this question is maybe for colleagues from RTD or colleagues from GROW, or Peter, if you are there. It's about materials research, which, according to the question, seems to be out of the focus now. For instance, some of the kits, such as nanomaterials, are not mentioned anymore. Are they not important anymore at EU level?
Do you want me to take that, Slavek? I don't see anyone ready to reply. I could.
Yes, please do so.
Yes. It is not true that nanomaterials are out. What is happening in the work in our strategy is that nanomaterials are increasingly seen as advanced materials. So there is a less clear separation now, which is natural compared to the past, between what we used to call advanced materials and nanomaterials. Both are recognized as very important key enabling technologies, and I refer you to the updated strategy for key enabling technologies in April 2018, if I remember right, which still recognizes advanced materials and nanomaterials and adds new key enabling technologies. So we have a unified approach to this, but it is certainly not true to say that nanomaterials are forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And I think with this one, we really exhausted the questions from the audience. So thank you very much. I think it was very informative for us. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we still have time to think and to rethink the shape of the partnerships before the final decisions are taken. So we'll be happy to take the outcome of the discussion there. And maybe now I will ask you, Matthias, to do the concluding and tell us what did you take out of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Slavek. I think it was useful to be able to clarify a number of things. We've learned a bit better how the crew program partnerships and the institutional partnerships will work, what are differences, what are commonalities. We've heard in which way member states are going to be able to inject their political ideas. I've understood that obviously this is going to be for the Compact Council, where especially on the institutional partnerships there will be possibilities for member states to come in, and involvement will take place through this as well. I wanted to clarify one specific point further to your question on space and the relationship with ESA, because I forgot to mention something which is obviously highly relevant here in our research domain. As I was focusing very much on satellite navigation on the one hand, Copernicus on the other hand, the third component for intense cooperation with ESA is obviously on research. We rely very much on them today, and we will continue to work with them in the future, provided that we manage to conclude a delegation agreement or the continuation of an agreement which is currently under negotiation. So we work on the assumption that we will have everything in place, a new governance in place for the new MFF, and obviously then also for Horizon Europe, where ESA will retain essentially the major role it currently has also in cooperating with us on research. Now, a number of other points I simply briefly wanted to make. We have here in our governance an obligation, also a possibility, to look at the objectives and the KPIs, and to develop a monitoring scheme. And I think this is an opportunity, because it provides us with the possibility to look at the impact over the life of the partnership. And the monitoring scheme also looks into additional activities which partners bring aside of EU-funded research to create leverage. And I think this is unique. This is a very interesting feature. And I'm looking forward to these assessments, which will not be rocket science. They will be based on common sense. Another point which was mentioned at the very outset by you in your questions, Slavik, we did not talk too much about it in the end today, is synergies. Very important, but also very challenging. As we've seen, synergies between many partnerships are obvious, such as between the development of key technologies and components in KTD, their use for artificial intelligence, data and robotics, between clean steel and processes for planet. So in practice, many links, but also we have to find the appropriate mechanism to exchange information and to develop collaboration between the different types of partnerships, institutional or co-programmed, but also with the mainstream collaborative research which takes place outside of these partnerships. Resilience. We did not talk too much in the end about this, but I think it is all with COVID very, very much at the back of our minds. And I think we have fully realized with the current crisis how important our work in this domain is, and that we need to make further progress in increasing the resilience of our activities and our policies. I think this is all from my side. Not much more to say at this stage. What can we say with regard to the continuation? I think we as a Commission will continue in the next weeks to work with stakeholders in order to finalize the partnerships. Back to you again, Slavik.
Thank you, Matthias. I think with this, we arrived to the end of our meeting. So I would like to thank everybody, thank the participants, those who asked the questions, and those who replied to them. Thank you for your attention.